Welcome to Crimes Beyond Borders, where we'll bring you the most thrilling true crime stories every single day. If you're fascinated by mystery, intrigue, and the darker side of human nature, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us as we unravel the most shocking and perplexing criminal cases from around the world. The story is about to begin after this intro.
From city streets to far-off lands, mystery slipping through our hands. Crimes beyond borders they speak, voices strong but words are meek. Every story leaves a mark, whispers softly in the dark.
Our stories at first are made for ourselves, to comfort us, to help us sleep, and to learn. Along the way, they become a part of our journey, teaching us English and fueling our passion for true crime. So, listen carefully, and if you're about to sleep, close your eyes. Let's begin.
The Shadow's Prelude. The city sprawled beneath a heavy blanket of mist, its alleys whispering stories that only those who listened closely could hear. In the sharp cut of silence between traffic lights and the shuffling of feet on cracked pavement, there was space for something darker to breathe. It was here, in this undercurrent of the city's restless pulse, that Nathaniel thrived. Nathaniel was a presence, not a person. He moved through the world like a ghost, a man of few words and fewer connections. His job as a night shift cleaner in one of the city's grand museums allowed him to exist without scrutiny, drifting silently past rooms filled with antiquities that whispered secrets of forgotten empires. His eyes, dark and sharp, missed nothing, capturing the world in a series of frames and stories that played out only in the confines of his mind. But beneath the mask of mundane routine, Nathaniel harbored a relentless craving, not for blood or chaos, but for control. To him, life was a chaotic symphony, its notes discordant and jarring unless held under the practiced hand of a conductor. And he was the conductor, ready to orchestrate moments of pure silence and perfect obedience. The catalyst, Anna. It was always a chance encounter that shifted something fundamental within him. For Nathaniel, it happened on an autumn evening when he first saw Anna. She was an art restorer, tasked with breathing life back into the museum's aging paintings. Their paths crossed under the dim yellow glow of the hallway lights, her arms full of rolled canvases, a smudge of ochre on her cheek. She looked up and smiled, a simple fleeting gesture that lit her eyes and pulled something taut in Nathaniel's chest. Anna was unlike anyone else in the museum's quiet halls. She moved with a lightness, a vitality that defied the hushed, careful world of preservation. She hummed to herself while she worked, sometimes a lilting tune, sometimes something mournful. Nathaniel would pause outside her door during his rounds, listening as the hum twisted through the cracks and curled around him. It wasn't long before she became an obsession, a puzzle to be studied and ultimately solved. He followed her outside the museum, noting how she bought flowers from the vendor on the corner every Thursday, how she sat on the same bench in the park during her lunch break, scribbling in a notebook. Her life was a dance of predictability, wrapped in moments of spontaneity, like the way she once stopped to help a pigeon tangled in a piece of wire, her fingers delicate as she set it free. Nathaniel recorded it all in the journals that filled his apartment, pages scrawled with observations, sketches, and notes that wove her into the fabric of his existence. The blueprint of precision. Nathaniel's apartment was immaculate, its surfaces gleaming under the dim overhead light. But it was the wall across from his bed that told the true story. It was covered with a detailed map of the city, photographs pinned like trophies, and strings of red thread connecting dots that marked Anna's world. Each pin told a story. The cafe where she drank herbal tea, the bookstore where she browsed for hours but never seemed to buy anything. At the heart of this map was the museum, a nexus that tied them together in their separate lives. He chose an old printing factory for the meeting, a building abandoned to the city's creeping decay, It was secluded, fenced off, and surrounded by warehouses that echoed with the distant sounds of freight trains and the hollow cries of stray cats. Inside, the factory was a maze of rusting machinery and broken glass, its shadows long and jagged. Nathaniel spent weeks preparing it, clearing a space where shafts of moonlight pierced through holes in the ceiling, spotlighting the place where he would set a single chair bolted to the floor. This was not a scene of chaos, but of order, where every detail had been rehearsed in his mind. The night unfolds. The night came in waves of rain and wind, a storm that masked the sound of tires on wet asphalt as Nathaniel parked a block from Anna's apartment. He wore dark clothing, gloves snug against his fingers, and a wool cap pulled low. He stood across the street, waiting as the lights in her window dimmed, watching the silhouette move behind the curtains before they settled into darkness. When she emerged minutes later, bundled in a coat and umbrella against the rain, Nathaniel's pulse quickened, matching the rhythm of the droplets pounding on the rooftops. He followed her, steps silent and measured, until she reached the crosswalk at the edge of the park. The streetlights cast halos on the wet pavement, and the world seemed to pause as she waited for the light to change. He moved swiftly, the cloth soaked in ether pressing against her mouth. Anna's eyes went wide, a brief spark of recognition and terror before they fluttered shut. Nathaniel caught her as her body slackened, lowering her to the ground with the precision of a craftsman handling delicate glass. The drive to the factory was silent, but for the rain drumming against the car and the low hum of the engine. Nathaniel glanced at her in the rearview mirror, the peaceful curve of her face now free of tension. He felt a shiver run through him, not of fear, but of anticipation. This was the moment he had built toward, and it was perfect. The orchestration of silence. Anna woke to the creak of metal and the cold bite of air on her skin. Her wrists and ankles were bound to the chair, the ties snug but not cruel. She blinked against the light filtering through the cracks above, eyes darting around the room before landing on Nathaniel. He stood just out of reach, the knife in his hand glinting in the moonlight. "Why are you doing this?" Her voice was raspy, raw with the edge of panic. Nathaniel took a step forward, tilting his head as he studied her. He opened his mouth, but words seemed inadequate. This wasn't about explanations, it was about control, about creating a moment suspended between fear and understanding. He moved the knife, tracing the air just above her skin, watching as she flinched, her muscles tensing. "I know you," she said suddenly, eyes narrowing, searching his face. "You work at the museum." The statement struck him like a physical blow. He had taken such care to remain unnoticed, blending into the background until he was part of the walls, the silence. The knife wavered, and the room seemed to close in around him. "You don't have to do this," Anna whispered, her voice soft but resolute. "Whatever you're trying to find, it's not here." Her words hit a nerve, a thread of doubt unraveling in his mind. The silence that had been his sanctuary now pressed against him like a weight. The knife trembled in his hand before he let it drop, the sound of metal hitting concrete sharp and final. The unraveling Nathaniel stepped back, eyes darting around the room as if seeing it for the first time. The moonlight no longer felt like a spotlight of power, but an accusatory glare. The meticulous plan that had defined him crumbled, leaving a gaping void where purpose had been. Anna's breathing steadied, and for the first time, he saw something in her gaze that wasn't fear. It was pity. The realization sent a shiver down his spine. He turned and fled, stumbling through the maze of rusted machines and shattered glass until he burst out into the rain-soaked night. The cold droplets seared his skin, mixing with the heat of his breath as he ran through the labyrinth of streets, the echo of her words chasing him. The collapse. Back in his apartment, Nathaniel sank to the floor, leaning against the wall as the silence closed in. The corkboard loomed above him, the map of Anna's life now an indictment of his failure. The journal on the desk, filled with pages of her life captured in meticulous detail, seemed to mock him. He pulled it down, flipping through the sketches and notes until they blurred into a single, incomprehensible mess. Anna was found in the early morning, sitting in the factory chair, shivering but unharmed. She described her captor in sparse, detached detail, focusing only on the quiet, calculated movements and the moment he let her go. The news ran with the story, dubbing it a miracle, the work of an anonymous would-be criminal whose resolve had faltered. The city buzzed with curiosity and relief. Nathaniel stayed hidden, withdrawing deeper into himself as days turned into weeks. The compulsion that had driven him, that need to wield control, was now a specter that haunted him, taunting him with the memory of her defiance. The silence that once comforted him now echoed with her words, a constant reminder that whatever he sought could not be forced into being. It could only unravel, leaving him with the gnawing realization that in trying to command the chaos, he had become lost in it. And so, as the city moved on, with new stories and fresh rumors, Nathaniel faded into the background. A shadow haunted by the silence he could no longer bear, trapped in a labyrinth of his own making, where control was an illusion, and the only thing that remained was the whisper of fear that never quite let him go.
The story has come to an end, but stay relaxed. If you feel yourself drifting off to sleep, just let the video play and enjoy the soothing music in the background. Let it guide you gently into rest. We'll be here, bringing you more stories every night. Sleep well, and see you tomorrow at 8 p.m.
Flickering lamps dimly glow, secrets hidden where few will go. In the half-light, truth begins to show. Unseen forces pull and tow. Windows shut, curtains drawn tight. Lonely figures melt in the night. Echoes fade out of sight. Moonlight bathes the world in fright. Ticking clocks, relentless sound. Time slips when danger's around. In the shadows, lost and found. Haunting silence so profound. Flickering lamps dimly glow, secrets hidden where few will go. In the half-light, truth begins to show. Unseen forces pull and tow. Windows shut, curtains drawn tight. Lonely figures melt in the night. Echoes fade out of sight. Moonlight bathes the world in fright. Ticking cloisters on crumbling walls, telling tales of forbidden calls. Into the night, someone falls.